killing me, Smalls.
To infinity and beyond!
What the what?
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
Rock your body, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, yeah. Rock your body right. The
Backstreet's back. All right.
That works. for a very non-planned talking about.
Yeah, that was totally unplanned.
Whenever he said three, like he usually counts me down 5, 4, 3, 2. When he got the 3, it's like, oh, we open up with a Backstreet Boys song.
Oh no.
We were talking about a television show literally 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Hit the record button and we just go.
This is how my mind works.
Magic.
I think we were on the same page, except for the what part.
To the What the What podcast. I'm Eric Creech, joined by Kyle Whitley and Ashby Brame, and we're excited for you to join us today. Very excited because today's episode is No, that was last week's episode.
Oh, sorry. Music. Sorry.
Kyle, we're supposed to be in sync.
Oh.
This
I
episode
thought we were
is
Backstreet Boys. I'm
Shut up.
confused.
This episode is larger than life, I will say.
Already.
And I think it's safe to say that I want it that way. Okay.
Wow.
That sounds like a bop.
Wow.
Maybe an bop.
Could be.
Oh, well, before we get jumping, let's jump into the beginning of our episode where I tell you, hey, thank you for joining for today's episode. This is the 4th episode of the 9 on the 90s season here with the What podcast. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. And, of course, rate and review us. We accept 5 stars.
That's right. Like the boy band, 5.
5.
Yep, you need 5 to have a good boy band.
That's right.
So,
5 stars.
Yep. Please also follow us on Facebook.
That's good. 5
YouTube,
stars.
and Instagram at What the What Media.
All one word.
We're killing
Wow.
it.
Nailed it.
And you can also find us on Twitter at WTW_media. So,
I'm trying to think. I'm just not that fast yet. We'll get there.
yep. So anyway, let's just jump right into it because I feel like this episode, like when I saw this episode, as when we were recording today, I thought this episode will either take us 20 minutes or it'll take us an hour and a half. And I
still don't know which it is.
And I feel like it's probably going to be closer to the latter than it is the former. So that's why.
Well, I think so because Ashby literally told us she's got 30 minutes for her one explanation in a little while. So
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and jump in. Let's talk about boy bands and girl bands from the 90s. All right. And I think it's only natural that we cede the floor to Ashby Brame because this is your jam. This is
Thanks.
Like me and Kyle, when we grew up in the 90s, it was not popular for us to enjoy.
I was going to say, you were culturally peer pressured into believing that you weren't allowed to enjoy
I wanted to make
this
a note
music.
on
No, we were culturally bullied into not liking this.
Fair.
I want to know why. Like I wrote a note about this. Like,
Tell me why.
yeah, ain't nothing but a heartache.
Tell me why.
Yeah,
You clearly enjoy the music.
we did.
We do.
Yeah.
We did then. Evidently, that we didn't think we did. We hated it.
I have a
And-
great story to tell about
But
that.
as far as I can remember, for as long as I can remember, I feel like 5th grade is the first time I ever heard of anything boy band, at least the term. I'm sure it was before then, but I was 5th grade. The first band I remember is like Hanson. Was
Yep.
that's the first one that just comes to mind. And I remember like Hanson's stupid.
Yeah.
And like all the girls would be like, "Oh my god, I love
They're so
Hanson."
cute. Yeah.
When I'm not watching Titanic, I'm listening to Hanson. Like,
Right.
and it's like, okay, wow, they're stupid.
Right.
Stupid boys. Look
Right.
like girls. What are
Yeah.
they doing?
Were there
Blah, blah.
long blonde
Long
hair?
blonde hair.
You're not Kurt Cobain. I didn't know Kurt Cobain was at that time. 2
Guys.
more years. I'll find Nirvana, but give me this.
A side note, I was at a Hanson concert in like 08, I think, or 09. And some woman had drug her husband there. And he stood beside her the whole time with his arms crossed wearing a shirt that said, "That chicken Hanson's hot."
Okay.
Because they did look like chicks
They
a
did.
little bit, right? Yeah.
Like, I don't get it, especially now as an adult. That's like, I just like music in general. You go listen to their like Tiny Desk concert from whenever they did it. Amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And like awesome. And I just don't know. Like, I want to know why, and I don't know if that's still today, or if the world's changed in today where that's not so much that, or just music's different now where you really don't have this now. But
catchy music, and it's not just boy bands; they were girl groups too.
Yes.
Sure.
So I just don't understand this idea that, like, you know, it was like, that's girly, that's stupid.
Yeah.
That, you know.
Well, let's just, I'm going to just put it bluntly here.
Sure.
In the 90s, there was a lot of rampant homophobia
Sure.
running around.
Also true.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that most of the boy bands were marketed towards girls.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you were a boy
Right.
and you liked
Yes.
what was marketed towards
Gay.
girls,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Hate
what
that.
it was.
Yeah.
That's
But
what it was.
Yes, 100%. I think
we
so.
learn from it, we grow from it, and we
Right.
know better now.
Right.
But
Well, the
that's
same
what
way
it was.
where, like, boys couldn't like Britney Spears or
Right.
Christina Aguilera.
Right.
Same way I think I mentioned before, where like we would be in school and be like, I can't wait to go on to TRL and vote for like Limp Bizkit #1. And it's like I go home and vote for like Hit Me Baby One More Time, but I'm
Right.
not going to tell you that
It's so
tomorrow.
catchy, yeah.
Like, you know, I'm going to show up like, heck yeah, I voted for
Right.
Limp Bizkit. We didn't make it. I don't know why they didn't do
Can't
it.
believe Nookie didn't win.
Yeah. It's like, but did you see Britney Spears? She got #1. That was great. I love that song. But you couldn't say that then
Right.
versus now.
Right.
And again, I think Eric hit it right on the head with that. And
mean,
I hate that. But like,
I know.
it's
I do
also,
too.
it's funny as adults now to come back to this though and say, the world told us this.
Right.
Yet we still secretly love these things. We did
Right.
ourselves. We didn't
Right.
know we liked these things. I like Mbop would come on, hate it. Don't want to hear that. I'm not
Right.
supposed to like that. Whatever.
Right.
Still know every word to it. You still have that
Yes.
thing now. If it comes on, you're like, heck yeah, Mbop. You get excited.
Right.
Then you didn't.
Such a good song.
Like, and so it's one of those things that the world told you should hate these things. You told the world you hated those things, but
Right.
still somehow like you didn't change the station. Like,
Did you know that Mbop was nominated for a Grammy?
I can believe it.
And Zach Hansen wrote Mbop, and he's still, I think he was 6 or 7. He's
That's
still one
crazy.
of the youngest people to ever be nominated for a songwriting Grammy.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, as I was saying,
Sorry.
let's
So-
see
That
was
the
a good
floor
explanation,
to
yeah.
Ashby Brain.
I feel like I'm your therapist. You're like your boy girl band
do.
therapist because you guys are on the couch. I'm in a chair, and I'm like, tell me how that made you feel. That's really sad. I'm
It
really
is.
sad for you guys.
Yeah. Lay down, Eric.
Lay
Let it
down,
out.
Eric. Just when's the first time you can remember being made fun of for liking something that you loved a lot?
Well, let's picture it.
Okay.
It's 1998.
North Johnson Middle School.
I wanted to dye my tips blonde.
Yeah, yeah. Of course,
Your
you
whole
did.
life could have been different.
It could have been.
Yeah.
Now you don't
I
have.
don't want to talk about
Now you shave your head.
Oh
like,
wow, now we're getting real deep.
like I don't know. Even with an older sister, like
Yeah.
I talked before how TLC kind of made it
Right.
into our lives.
Well,
But-
and the other thing is like that. I mean, it's so interesting how like present that message is to this day,
Sure.
right? That like these people are not musically talented. That this was a manufactured genre, and that it was marketed to teenage and preteen girls who didn't know any better, that would accept any level of music. And it's interesting to me that still exists, like this idea that when I say I've seen Hanson in concert 8 times, and I've seen Backstreet Boys in concert 3 or 4 times, and I've seen New Kids on the Block 7 times, and 98 Degrees once, and I've seen Boys to Men, and those groups are so talented. Like what these kids, because most of them were all teenagers themselves, or early 20s. Nsync has a few a cappella songs on a few of their albums. And if you go listen to what they were doing with their harmonies, there's no way that you could admit to yourself or anyone else that there wasn't talent there. That like they weren't almost like barbershop quartet levels of harmonizing. And what it took to nail all those like highly intensely choreographed dance moves and videos, it's interesting to me that this one genre of music is still actively just sort of like dumped on, by a lot of people, when these people were talented, they were hardworking. It still holds up. Like it's catchy, it's well done. I I was the exact right age for this genre to just like absolutely like steamroll me, you know, based on my peers, based on what I was watching, based on what was being marketed to me. And so there was no way that I wasn't going to be growing up when I did and not just be fully seeped in this era of music. But as an adult, like I still listen to it all the time. Sure. I still go to concerts for these people and I still have a great time. And a lot of them, like I'll talk about later, a lot of them are still putting out really good music. And so the idea that like this era can just kind of be like swept under the rug as like teen pop or teen bop or whatever, like that doesn't jive with me.
Well, first of all, apologies for kicking my laptop. When Ashby said lay on the couch, like I literally this is comfortable.
Yeah.
I grabbed my microphone off the stand.
Yeah,
I'm holding it in my hand now.
that's why I bought that couch.
And I went and grabbed my cell phone, so I wanted to look at my laptop, but I kicked it on the way back. So,
fine.
but anyway, there's a great to kind of piggyback off your idea that these were fantastic artists and they knew what they were talking about. There's a great YouTube video that it was from Apple Music's Essentials featuring Justin Timberlake. And it's the most iconic songs that shaped his career. And it's 14 minutes long. I watched it last year in a long car ride on the way back from West Virginia. And it's just him dissecting his music and where he talks about his influences. And it's like, this isn't some guy that some producer just stuck in front of a microphone and said, hey, be pretty and we'll make it sound good in post with auto-tune and all this other. No, this is a guy who knows his stuff. And I think as you dive more in depth to all of these different artists, you'll find more often than not that that's the case with a lot of these guys. You'll have some bands that, okay, you were literally like imagined like by a bunch of producers and like, that's why you don't have the staying power.
Right.
But the ones who stand the test of time, it's because they actually had the talent. It's because they actually had the knowledge and they actually had the ability to do something with what they have. Right. And they were able to make the most of their marketing through, ever how it came about.
Well, I think that's a good point too for when we were, fifth graders, middle schoolers, as all this was happening, is my perspective, like starting to play an instrument in that age, getting into rock bands and getting into history of rock or just music in general, where you see these musicians, you saw it as these are the talented ones. These are the ones playing instruments and writing their own songs, doing these things. Right. And it was put out there to you because it wasn't, I don't know exactly where the idea comes from, but it is put out as somebody got these 5 dudes together, wrote everything, and they just stand there and dance and sing whatever they're told to do. Correct. And you took so much away from that. Same way even with Britney, and it's in your mind because the same way when like Avril Lavigne came along, I really liked her. She's not in this category, but I really liked her because she was more the style of what I did or liked.
Right, punk pop.
And then there's that question even inside of you at that age to look in, try to find out about her and be like,
does she write
her own music?
Right.
Is this somebody else? And she's like faking it. What is it?
Right.
It took away from every bit of ability that, she can play guitar, not amazingly, but she can do what she wants.
Right.
But she also can sing.
Right.
But you didn't want to, like, if she didn't write it herself, you wanted to discredit everything about her.
Like somehow any people who didn't have, like, who had amazing singing talent and nothing else were somehow faking it, right?
Yes.
Like, so you can say to Britney Spears, we're like, you're not a real artist because someone like Max Martin hands you a track and you lay down vocals and then you do some dance moves and that's all you are. But they would never say that to someone like Whitney Houston, who also did not write her own songs and didn't really play an instrument, but like could sing like an angel. Like, why are we trying to take stuff away from people that like that's their God-given talent? Like.
Well, even the fact too that, like as Eric mentioned, like some of these people did write their music, or at least a lot of them, especially, had an influence in it,
right?
To explain or just to add into what they were doing. And so I think that's something that, if you can get out of your own head about and feel like,
right,
are they talented or not? Quit looking at it as trying to find reasons not to like these people or whatever. Like, if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. That's fine. Like, you don't have to like every type of music. But at the same time, a lot of it was like, I don't like it because I'm not supposed to.
Exactly.
Now I also don't like it because I'm into real music. This is like
Right.
cheesy, like
Right.
like nobody's playing an instrument. This is
Right.
all just on a disc playing.
Yeah.
They're singing and dancing to it, and it's like
Well, and
that's not good.
let's talk about
Sure.
the difficulty of that.
Oh, for
Because,
sure.
Look, the idea of music as entertainment, because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, entertain. When you're at a concert, you're looking for a show. You're not looking, some people, yes, you're looking for someone to sit on a stool for 2 hours and play a guitar and tell stories, and that's great. When you go to this show, they're going to have choreographed dance while they're singing.
Yeah.
And they might not ever pick up an instrument.
Right.
They're both valid. They're
Correct.
both valid forms of entertainment. And I would even say, okay, the difficulty level of being able to sing and dance for 2 hours, for an hour and a half,
Sure.
to all of your songs is going to be up there with being able to play an instrument and sing for an hour and a half or 2 hours. I mean, I think they're comparable to me, at least.
Right.
And I think there needs to be a little more credit to that, okay?
Oh, for sure.
Because the idea of when you go to a concert, you're looking to be entertained. When I go to a Need to Breathe concert, I want to see them, play all the great instruments and, put on a good show. But who's to say, like, if you were to go to a Backstreet Boys,
Right.
the most of the people going to that show want to see them do their choreographed dance
Right.
while they sing their hits.
Right.
I mean, it's very important.
Right.
Also,
Both things are hard, right?
Yes, both
So,
things are
like,
hard.
Watching, Zach Hansen play drums and sing
Yeah.
for a 2-hour set without a break is just as hard as watching Nick Carter run around and dance and sing
Sure.
on a stage for 2 hours without a break. Like, both of those are feats of talent and, it's a cardio workout too,
Sure,
basically.
yeah.
Kyle can tell you, like, we did an hour show at the farm 2 years ago, and it was the first time we've ever played for an hour straight. And at the end of it, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And I just stood there and sang. I didn't do any dancing. I didn't do any instrument playing.
Right.
I sang, and it was exhausting. Throw in extra things you're doing,
Yeah.
whether it be play an instrument or dance, anything choreographed,
Right. Outfit changes.
change.
Yeah.
Yes, that's difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, let's appreciate that.
Right.
And I think we're definitely at a point now where we can and we do a little bit more.
Yes.
I think we're out of that. At least us as adults. I can't speak for like teenagers or kids per se, but like we're at a point now that we can just appreciate music for what it is. There's still probably some people who are like, you can't listen to that, but it's like, well, why not? And then
Right.
they won't vocally speak it most of the time. But also something too, when you step back away from it, and I personally haven't been to their concerts, but to see a lot of these, especially now, there are a lot of times there is like a full blown band behind these people. Like it's not just, hey, we put on a CD and then dance for 2 hours or
Right.
sing. Like it's the same way with hip hop or rap. Like I think it's easy for us to discredit, boy bands or girl bands for these type of things or girl groups, but to look, I went and saw Snoop Dogg like with Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think in high school, and I was like, okay, I thought Snoop Dogg was cool, but I didn't really think much into it. I was like, they're going to have this, we're just kind of like DJ and stuff, Snoop Dogg, then Red Hot Chili Peppers. Snoop Dogg comes on, has a full-blown band behind him, and he was like, this is my band, the Snoopadelics, this is me, like, we're doing this. The same way you go listen to, like, boy and girl bands, there's
Right.
full-blown bands a lot of time
Oh,
behind
yeah.
them that's like, they've got the live music aspect of this backing everything they're doing. This, at that point, it literally is no different than you
Right.
going and seeing another band that, the lead singer wrote the lyrics and he's singing, but the rest of them are just playing music to it.
Right.
Each one of them is talent in their own way. And so I definitely think it's for us, we should just be able to appreciate it. Stop making excuses. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But like,
Right.
decide that on your own that today, that's just not what I care for.
Yeah.
But not because somebody else told you shouldn't. So
Yeah.
I want to hit on like a little bit of history real quick, just to kind of give, I guess the props and the flowers to the bands that came before these groups in the 90s.
Yeah.
So like the earliest forerunners for boy band music, barbershop quartets.
Oh yeah.
oh, sure.
That's where it all
the coasters,
starts.
the drifters, the
Yeah.
platters.
And then that evolves into like you have the Beatles, okay, who probably the first known boy band. You've got the Jackson 5 and the
Yeah.
Osmonds in the late 60s and the 70s. And then you get into New Edition,
Yeah.
New Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
That's getting you into the 90s. And then beyond this era, you got the 2000s, obviously, Backstreet Boys, Nsync were still, rocking from their 90s popularity.
Right.
Then you get the Jonas Brothers, who evolved from our era. You have One Direction.
Yeah.
And then you've got bands like different K-pop bands, which are kind of, again, I know nothing about that.
I know nothing about K-pop,
but I know
yes.
it's ridiculously popular. So, and then when you have like girl groups, okay, and that's I keep seeing that term pop up, and that makes sense because the alliteration, boy bands and girl groups. So, you have the Andrews Sisters. I've never heard of them, but they started in 1937. In 1955 through the 70s, you've got the Fontaine Sisters, the McGuire Sisters, a bunch of sisters.
The Ronettes.
The Ronettes, yes, the Ronettes. Let's see, you've got the Paris Sisters, the Supremes.
Oh, yeah.
In the 70s.
Yeah.
Sister Sledge.
Yeah.
In the 90s, we'll get to those in a bit. And then that continues to evolve after that.
Right.
But
then like rock girl groups like the Go-Go's, the Bangles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's that part of characterization that you've got to break down for yourself to say what is a boy band or what is a girl band or girl group.
Right.
The easiest thing for me, like putting it out there, was like if they predominantly don't play musical instruments but are the forefront of something else.
True. Right.
That was the easiest way for me to say, okay, a boy band or girl group.
Right.
Because it's easy, the same way like Eric's saying, you search girl band, you're getting something different than if you search girl group.
Right.
Because of the way they're characterized.
Right.
And so because if you search just band, they assume that it's boys most of the time or men, whatever.
Right.
And so if you type in like girl band, you're getting all sorts of other things that are very much not like the category we're talking about.
Right, like the Go-Go's and the Bangles played their own instruments.
They did. And like the same way, the more I thought about it, those like the more Motown stuff you listen to, the more like oldies of what our parents would have, what we classified when we were growing up. A lot of that fits right into this, what we're saying. Like Eric listed a lot of them, but like boy bands of what we say they are today. You think about like the Temptations, when a lot of them is just a bunch of them across the stage singing, and dancing and choreography in the same way Jackson 5 and everything else. Like, you may have had some of them that played instruments here and there, but they predominantly were this one thing. And it's tough because if you look back, say the Beatles, like the Beatles is one that comes to mind because when they come in for like the first time, there's this giant craze of like girls and women going nuts over it. The same way that we relate that to when Backstreet Boys and Nsync and everybody else was coming along. But at the same time, they are a band differently because it's just 4 people playing 4 instruments. So it's tough, and it's all on how you judge that. And I think we have a category a little bit later for some of that. But, I think coming into it, I had to at least narrow it down to something.
Right.
So that I could pick some songs and stuff without it being all over the place.
It's also interesting in the 80s how, and I'm sure Eric will get to the 80s girl groups in a second, because how hip-hop merged into this girl group boy band situation. Like Belle Biv DeVoe, TLC,
Salt and Pepper,
and it got really enmeshed in a good way,
So, let's just trying to figure out the. You have a couple of notes here on our outline, Ashby. If you want to.
Oh yeah, I wanted to mention, so we don't have to get down into the minutia of the history of all this. There is a docuseries on Netflix called "This Is Pop." And 2 episodes in particular will give you a really good background for this era of music. Stockholm Syndrome, which is a really good one. It's about how all of today's greatest pop songs come out of Sweden, basically. And then also the Boys to Men effect, which will talk about how 80s boy bands basically sort of were where the rise of all of this kind of started, moving into the 90s and the early 2000s. And it gives the history a lot better than I could ever do. But honestly, that whole series is really good. It's called This Is Pop.
I don't think I've seen it.
Super interesting. Yeah.
Definitely going to add that to the queue there.
Yeah, really good. So, and then the other little quip I had was the first. I don't think it was my first ever concert, because I had definitely gone and seen other things before, but it was the first time that I had asked to go see a group. So my grandparents had taken me to see like Loretta Lynn, I think, or
lucky.
Yeah, like long time ago. I had no clue what was happening. And then my parents had taken me to see Alabama a few times. Like when they retired for the first time, they had a show down in Myrtle Beach, kind of like a residency. And we went and saw Alabama. But this was the first time that I had said, I want to go see, and it was Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
And it was when they were putting out their second album, Millennium. And so for Christmas, and I can't remember if it was 99 and the tickets were for 2000, or if it was Christmas of 98 and the tickets were for 1999. That era is a little confusing.
So the Millennium album came out in 99.
Okay.
So I'm guessing the tour was
in 2000,
yes.
maybe. So my parents got me tickets that year for me, but for the whole family to go,
Sure.
basically. Poor Hunter got dragged along. He would have been like 4 or 5. And my
he
dad
secretly loves them today. So.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
My dad still says to this day that he would rather have a root canal with no numbing agent or medicine than repeat the experience of that concert of like the RBC Center or PNC Arena or whatever. I forget where it was.
At the time, it was the Raleigh Entertainment Sports Arena.
Yes. And it was just thousands of teenage and preteen girls screaming their heads off at full high-pitched volume at the top of their lungs for like 3 hours. And I'm sure my dad was like, this is hell. This is what hell is.
It's nothing to do with the band. It's just everybody that's here.
Yes. Yeah. So, but that tour also was the one where they were on wires. They were like flying over the crowd. They brought moms and daughters from the audience up to sing a song to them and like gave them each a rose. Like it was very stylized.
Yeah.
It was intense. It was so good. Yeah.
So here's my boy band story. Back in 1999, 2000, I was in 8th grade. We had language arts, and there was only 4 boys in the class. Myself, I'm going to go ahead and just name them. Myself, Alex Winders, Josh Sherrod, Jerry and Aaron. Okay. And 4 boys and like 16 girls, right?
What a group, too.
I know. What a group. And we had a project that was presented to us. We would group projects. We all love group projects. And the group project was we would have to take a song and rewrite it to talk about a historical event. And it was open to interpretation.
Okay.
So before we could even like mention like whose group we had to choose our own groups or whatever, Alex grabs the 3 guys and like, okay, guys, we're going to group together. We're not grouping with any of the girls. We're
Yeah.
going to group together. He's like, I've got this figured out. Alex was full of great ideas.
I was about to say, sounds like Alex.
Okay, he's like, these girls, they love boy bands. They love Nsync. They love the Backstreet Boys. We need to do a song to one of those bands.
Wow. He was really
I'm
reading
saying,
the crowd. Like
yeah.
he had the temperature of that room.
I'm about to say, that's edgy too. Like we had to do something similar in like 7th grade. We had to do a national anthem. And we did like Freak on a Leash by Korn for Cambodia. Like, so you guys went a totally different direction. So
we had to do that project too. We ended up doing something to the Rugrats theme song because the Rugrats movie had come out and there's a rap to it. So
Right.
But so in 8th grade, historical event in language arts, and Alex's idea was we write a song based on the Mike Tyson Evander Holyfield fight,
Okay.
where Mike Tyson bites off Evander Holyfield's ear.
You're correct.
Okay, and that's a historical event. We cleared.
Sure.
it,
Yeah.
Right. We called it Bite, Bite, Bite. Based off of Bye, Bye, Bye.
Yes.
So, can you stand up and reenact this for us? 'Cause that'd be amazing.
Not anymore, no. But we
I just want to be
literally,
the teacher.
How did you?
That you're running that by like, God, I'm too old for this.
Paige Gower Hare, whatever her last name is now.
I can't be in this
Bless
profession
her
anymore.
heart.
Yeah.
She smiled the whole time. I don't know what she was thinking.
Y'all made her question her whole life and all her choices.
I think
I
this
want
was,
to reach out to her
I
and
think
find
this
out,
was
like,
her
what do you
first
think?
year teaching
Oh,
too.
God.
It had to have been, yeah, because we had her the next
Yeah,
year.
it had to have been. Yeah.
So
I bet she remembers this like
Alex
specifically.
went home, studied the choreography of the dance.
Yes, he
moves.
did. Yes, he did.
We practiced.
On
we
brand.
rewrote the lyrics. I don't remember them, but all I know
Oh,
is
that's perfect.
But we
Like
didn't
Baby
have to
Shark before it ever happened.
We didn't have to change much because it's like the words. I'm doing this tonight. We're probably going to start a fight. We know this can't be right. yeah, Evander, come on. I mean,
Wow.
That is
Wow.
good.
That is.
I mean,
Wow.
like, so, I mean, we didn't have to change much of the lyrics because it fit.
Right.
And instead of doing the whole puppet thing, we did like some boxing moves and
Right.
And she told us like, okay, we got 100 on that. I wish we had filmed that
Right.
because
There's
Right.
still a chance.
I mean I don't think she filmed it obviously.
We
But,
can reach out to
Right.
Alex, Jerry. Who's the other one?
Josh Sheridan.
They're all available. Reach out. Say, hey,
See if we can get a reunion tour.
it's been almost like 22 years. Can we get this?
But I had heard several
bye,
years
bye.
later in high school that she did that project every year, and she always used us as an example. And 6 years later, she had never given out 100.
Wow.
We were the only 100
were
that she'd
high,
ever given
yeah.
out.
Wow. I mean, highest praise.
So-
honestly, that's intense.
Now, here's the thing: the whole point of this was to impress the girls.
Oh, for sure.
Didn't work.
Didn't work.
Like
Definitely.
they liked it, but they weren't impressed in the way we were hoping they would be impressed.
Right. They were like, that was pretty dope.
That was
but
pretty good,
It's
but-
also gross. He bit his ear off.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that was pretty good, but none of you were Justin Timberlake.
You know what would have
Also
fixed this?
that.
If you would have jumped
Frosted tips.
frosted tips. If you would have not let the people's opinion get you, and you done frosted tips,
Oh,
you would
man.
have done this.
Well, the people were my dad, so I mean,
Oh, that's true.
let's be clear, military dad. So
Fair.
he was mad. I had like it wasn't longer hair, but
Right.
it wasn't like buzz cut at that point.
Right,
So,
right.
Like it was actually like it had hair, like it was kind of like your hair a little bit. you
Yeah, I
know?
remember.
So
Well, I don't know that I have one. Like just thinking about the story, I just do remember like my sister really liking it, but not so much because she's 5 years older than me, so there is that gap there. She did enjoy it or whatever, but I do remember my cousin Amber was really into it, and she's just a year older than me, so she's Eric's age, and I guess she wasn't in the classroom. She would have loved that, I'm sure, but. The closest thing I can say, and it's not even the same because she doesn't really fall in this category, but like Britney Spears, bless you, there was like a radio contest where my cousin won and went to Vegas to see Britney Spears.
What?
Like she got flown to Vegas to see Britney Spears.
I
like,
remember that.
I don't remember if she got on stage with her or not. I don't remember how that worked.
I
but
do
like,
not. That is
and
amazing.
again, like it's not technically the same category, but that's the closest thing I can think of to something like that.
Wow.
All right, let's jump to our superlatives.
Okay.
First one I have here is the most underrated or underappreciated group. What you got?
I'll go first because I'm throwing this out there. I'm sure you guys have more in-depth ones. I had a really hard time with this. I have more with the next question, but like just trying to be like a lot of the ones that you hear of frequently made it bigger.
Right.
One that really came to mind once I was listening through some songs is All for One. When you
yeah.
think of I Swear, I mean, that song and then I Can Love You Like That. Like, I feel like for us as especially that age where if you didn't see the music videos, you weren't 100% sure who they were. Like,
Right.
and so I want to say, like, I Swear, for a lot of people got thrown in, like, Boys II Men. They sang I Swear. Like,
Right.
obviously.
Well, here's the thing.
Got him confused.
John Michael Montgomery covered both of those.
Yes. Yes.
true.
Which
So,
is-
like,
yeah.
whenever I hear those songs, I always think of John Michael Montgomery and not All for
Read
One.
You, Cinderella.
You hoped it would come true, that one day your Prince Charming would come rescue you.
Oh man!
So-
I can see where people not seeing them
Yeah.
would get that sound confused.
If you were
with
just
Boyz II
listening
Men.
to the songs on the radio and stuff, like I said, at the time, for people now, like, if you're sure, there's the internet and everything. You could
Yeah.
literally type it in, it would tell you that, every lyric to the song when it was written, everything. But just back then, like, if you didn't see a music video on TRL and you didn't, like, study videos every day on VH1 or MTV or whatever,
Right.
if you just heard it on the radio, if you found out who one person was, a lot of times until you found out differently, you're like,
Right.
I think that's who that is.
Right.
And so for the most part, I feel like I Swear was written, or like at least performed by Boyz II Men. But then listen to it now, and you're like, no, All for One, they were this whole thing. And you remember them now, like you talk
Right.
about it. But just in the mix of everybody else that we're going to talk about today, that was a group that stood out that was like, I don't remember a ton about it, but I remember these being great songs. So
Right.
that's where I threw them at there.
Right. Yeah, I've got quite a few.
I added another one. If somebody covers them, I'll jump in with that too.
Okay. So my first one is BB Mac, like
Oh, true.
100%.
I'll meet you back here, baby.
So good.
Miss you, want you, need you so.
Yes.
I remember BB Mac.
So good. And I think that they were definitely like toned down. They didn't do dance moves. I would think that they fancied themselves more of like an Oasis type of band, like in that sort of like toned down Brit alternative pop almost. But the problem is that they got picked up somehow by the Disney Channel, because the Disney Channel used to do music video commercial breaks.
Yep.
And so during a commercial break, they would show you a whole music video. And BB Mac got picked up, and so you would hear like Out of My Heart, Back Here Baby. And so they sort of got lumped, I think, into the boy band era, where and we can talk about this under one of the other categories of whether or not we would consider them a boy band for a few reasons. But certainly I think underrated as far as like talent wise. And then also Dream. Dream was a girl group.
Yep.
They had their second album technically was the one that really went places, and it was called It Was All a Dream. And I had the CD, and I burned that thing. I melted it into my stereo system because I listened to it from start to finish. I thought they were really underappreciated as a group. They were really talented. I feel like they were kind of like their generation's Little Mix.
Yeah.
Like, I think they were almost ahead of their time, what's the other group? Something Harmony.
Fifth Harmony.
Fifth Harmony that Camila Cabello was a part of. They were kind of like that. Like, they had a totally different vibe from the other girl groups, I thought. So they were really good.
Well, even as a guy in that generation, I remember the Dream music video, at least one of I don't remember which song it was, rough hand, but same way, you knew every word.
Right.
You knew all of it. It was super catchy, and then like everything they did, like,
yes.
again, I wasn't supposed to like it, doing my air quotes right now, but like still, you sat at home and watched it.
So good. And then also, I think 3LW, 702, and Black, but QUE. They, unfortunately, I think that they just got robbed with how good they are because they had to share an era with first TLC and then Destiny's Child, who are arguably like the goats of female trios, right? And so those groups, if not one-hit wonders, were kind of close to one-hit wonders, which is unfortunate because I think they all had pretty good music. Black did a song with Nsync that not a lot of people remember, where Nsync was featured, called Bring It All to Me, which still to this day is like a bop. And then the other one I'll mention, and this was where I was making a light earlier before we started recording, that I had a 30-minute speech for this. It's not quite 30 minutes, but Hanson. And I know I've said it before, and I'll say it again to anyone who will listen. I feel like every time I say the word Hanson, what I hear back from the average person is bop, right? Which is fair. But I will beg anyone listening, if you never do anything else that I ask or tell you to, please just go to Spotify to humor me and listen to anything Hanson has put out since The Walk in 2007. Shout It Out in 2010. And while you're at it, listen to String Theory, which is a more recent album they put out. And it's basically some of their best songs played live with a full string orchestra in the background. And it is beautiful. It's beautiful. Hanson, I think, gets a bad rap because they were very young. They had long hair. They did kind of look like girls. They had really high voices. But they wrote their own songs. They played their own instruments. Again, I think by definition, they might kind of get unfairly lumped into boy band because they weren't dancing. They were just a band of boys, and they had a lot of label issues early on, which kind of resolved, I think, moving into their second album this time around. But I think it changed how they were being marketed, and I think that's why people just kind of thought they dropped off the face of the earth. But they've been putting out music for over 20 years now, consistently, very good music, under their own independent record label called 3CG, 3 Car Garage. And it's really good. It's really good, I promise.
Like I mentioned earlier, too, I totally recommend going and finding their, like, Tiny Desk concert because it was awesome to see. Like, I don't remember if it was, like, around Christmas time for at least, and they may have done it multiple times, I don't remember. But the one I watched, it was awesome to see because, again, now, as an older person with, a different perspective, seeing these three brothers standing in a room playing instruments together, you do forget that they were technically a boy band. Like, in that moment, like, no, this is just a band. And I think
Yeah.
it's tricky. And I mean, before we jump to Eric's too, I know I threw in All for One. I think there's the other side of the spectrum too, where we sometimes lump in like R&B groups into boy bands,
Right?
Because that was technically the easiest thing to call it. So I do think our conversation today is a little bit on the vague side, where we're going to throw some people in and out that aren't your typical boy bands. Some very much are,
Right?
But then there's the some that kind of still qualify, even though they're a little bit on different. Depending who's listening, maybe would categorize them somewhere else. So,
All right. So when I think of the idea of boy bands or girl groups, my mind immediately goes to Backstreet Boys and Nsync.
100%.
I think of 98 Degrees. I think of O-Town in a sense, because that was, the Making the Band type show that came out in the late 90s. I start thinking of like TLC.
Yeah.
I think of Destiny's Child. I think of Boyz II Men. I think of New Kids on the Block. All these great groups. And I never think of LFO.
I 100% was going to put LFO here.
They're on one of my songs. Like, they're one of my songs.
And I don't know why, because they were just as
They're fantastic.
they were just as prominent during
Right.
this time. If I never hear the lyric, I like girls who wear Abercrombie and Fitch.
Right.
If I never hear that
Yeah.
again, like it'll be a long time, whatever.
Right,
like,
right.
It won't be soon enough. But
Yes.
for a long time, I heard about how Chinese food makes people sick, and
Right.
they always like girls who fly do something in the summer, and
Right.
I don't mean to steal this from you, but we're a mutual friend and favorite of the show, Chris Rode.
yes, former biggest fan of the show.
We were on I played football 1 year, I think 7th grade in middle school. We're on a trip back to or from a game, and you were cool as you bring your digital CD player or whatever and your headphones and stuff.
With no skips.
No skips.
Yep.
I was like, what are you listening to? Can I listen to? And he's like, he kind of gave me a look that he was a little hesitant for me to listen to. He's like, yeah, but don't say anything. I was like, okay. I put it up. It's LFO. It's the LFO album. He had bought the album, was listening to it. We were listening to Girls of Summer and all the other ones on there. Same way. Like, you kind of like were dancing together. Like, I like girls that wear Abercrombie and Fitch.
Right.
And then, but you were singing it so low that like nobody else on that bus was going to like hear you because you're on the football team and you can't say that.
Right.
It's not manly
Right.
or whatever.
New Kids
And I give
on the
credit
Block had
to
a
Chris
lot of
Rode.
hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the, like, they did a callback, right?
Yeah.
They mentioned New Kids on the Block. They mentioned New Edition
Yeah.
in that song.
So they don't get enough credit. Back to you completely, but it's just like it made me think about what we're talking
That's
about.
the thing. Like, you never think of LFO when you think of boy bands, and I just
Definitely
don't know why. So
underrated.
If they had definitely the big hits, but some pretty good like medium sized hits too. And
Yeah.
because they had such a great library, they're underrated because we don't think of them.
Sure.
So that would be my entry for most underrated group or boy band. Let's go into the most overrated group, and I think me and Ashby are probably going to agree here. But I also have another group to mention. So
I'll go first just because I don't have it was really hard for me to find anything because there's a lot of, especially I wasn't one that was like into any but the main ones. It was hard for me to come up with somebody, but the more I wanted to throw somebody there, I thought a lot more about them and were like, well, no, they kind of deserved it. Like, they were here. Like, so they earned it. Like, but then I would
Right.
come back for it. So honestly, I don't have a specific one. I figured I'd let you guys that have a little bit more knowledge of some of it. And then
Okay.
if I can add, I will. But
O-Town, for
Okay.
one.
Yes.
Okay. Like, they were like knockoff Nsync. Like, they just weren't, like, no offense to those guys. Some of them are still around. Some of them are still doing boy band stuff. They all seem really nice. They were all talented. But that group seemed like someone trying to copy a formula.
Sure.
Because the formula was working.
It's
So
like-
let's throw it up there again.
it's like when Coke and Pepsi are popular. Oh, let's put out a third, another
Yes.
off-brand cola.
Yes.
It'll be cheaper, but
Right.
maybe it'll make as much money.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing with Five. Five was like a knockoff Backstreet Boys. And honestly, like, I will still belt out All or Nothing. Will still belt out When the Lights Go Out. Like, those are still bops. But like, those bands just were not at the same caliber.
Well, fun fact, I learned when I was 12, I believe, how to pick out All or Nothing on the piano.
Oh, nice.
I could have played the da 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 da. Dun, 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 dun.
What a good song, honestly. Yeah.
But then they lost me with Liquid Dreams. So
Yeah, there was definitely a
that
boy
didn't
band.
work.
You had to have one inappropriate song per
Mm-hmm.
album, and it had to be inappropriate enough to feel like you were being like bad, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but it had to be veiled enough that an 8-year-old could listen to it,
Mm-hmm.
mainly me, 8-year-old me, and have no clue what you were talking about. And O-Town had Liquid Dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and I was probably 20 something before I re-listened to that song, and I was like, what?
What's the fun part? Like what we mentioned a couple weeks ago on our list of like Third Eye Blind didn't like vaguely do anything.
Right.
Yet we thought we sang along for our whole
Right.
childhood. Turns out we
Yeah.
didn't.
Yes,
Well, it's a totally different
exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
Very similar with that.
I'm going to throw in, and this might be controversial,
Okay.
98 Degrees.
See, I liked 98 Degrees, but not, you know,
I always heard them in the conversation.
I wouldn't.
remember-
I've seen them in concert, so I really can't call them overrated because they were really good, actually. But when you do stack them up next to some other groups,
I always heard them in the conversation with Backstreet Boys and with Nsync.
right?
And I was looking back through their library, and I remember, was it I Do, Cherish You?
Yes.
Like, yeah, okay. You have that certified banger or
Right,
whatever,
right,
certified great,
right.
all-time great love song.
Right.
And then I went back and I was like, there's nothing else.
Oh yeah, there is.
No,
the
there's-
hardest thing. It's the hardest thing.
Yeah, I
I'll
listened to
ever
that.
Have to do.
I'll throw this out there.
Oh man.
98 Degrees was my one other underrated band.
Oh man.
But the only reason I say that is I don't even necessarily know that I say that in the context of during that time period. I more
Right.
so think about it now. You think of like Backstreet Boys and Nsync first, then you vaguely think of 98 Degrees with
Right.
that somewhere. So it's like,
when I
maybe
think
it's underrated.
when I
but
think of them as the third, the third group, like in wrestling terms, you had WWF, WCW, then you had like
Yeah,
ECW.
then they had like, give
So,
me
like-
one more night. Give me one more
So
night.
when I
Una
think of 98
noche.
Degrees in that term, I'm like,
Oh,
no,
I like 98
there's
Degrees.
better bands that should have filled that third role.
I mean,
And I felt like they
Arguably.
unfairly got it. Was considered the big three in that time frame.
right. Yeah, that's fair.
I will say, like, just, while we're on the topic, when I went to church camp in 1998, they were doing boy band parody groups.
Okay.
So you had Out of Sync,
Okay.
the Front Lawn Men, and then you had 32 Degrees and Freezing.
Nice. Nice.
what also makes you think of like what song was it that Blink 182 did? I don't think it's What's Made You Again. It's one of the other ones. I don't know why I'm blanking, but the music video literally was just a parody
Yes.
of
yeah.
all like Nsync, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, where he had like a different temperature, like tattoo on his arm.
Yes.
And
Yeah. And he was like Christina Aguilera. Then he ate the flower
Yep.
from Ginny in a Bottle. Yes.
So they redid the whole like
it was all the small things.
all small things. Yep, just
The
taking it
music
off
video.
all their music videos and doing that.
Yeah.
So as you were talking about the degrees, all I could think about was like the tattoo,
Yeah.
like 98 degrees on your
Do
arm.
you guys remember Five?
I remember the name. That's all I remember.
Oh man, they had Baby When the Lights
Okay,
Go
yeah, yeah.
Out, and then they had, and I don't remember how the song goes, I just remember the opening rap, and it's like, 5 bad boys with the power to rock you, blowing your mind, so you gotta get into 5, what you waiting for? If you want it, 3, 2, 1, let's do it. That's all they had.
That's good.
That's I think I've like nothing is them. I just enjoy watching you sing it. Like this
Oh
is
my
good.
God, it's so good.
I think there's something to say about it because some of these bands that you're mentioning, like where Erica and I are like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember
Right,
that.
right.
But I feel like for us, especially during that time period, we had the main 3 per se. I guess we'll
Right.
say at that time point.
The big three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other ones vaguely came along.
Yes.
Where it was like,
Right.
if you were into that music, you ended up
Right.
listening to the rest of that
Well,
music.
and because they admit themselves, like if you watch the Boy Band Con on YouTube, I think, and it was co-produced at least by Lance Bass, and it's about Lou Pearlman and all
Yeah.
his crimes. But basically, he created Backstreet and Nsync and saw how well it worked, and then scrambled to just keep formulating these bands. And so O-Town got pushed out, and it wasn't the same. Like he was just trying to, at that point it was like factory manufacturing these groups,
Yeah.
and Dream, I think, came out of Lou Pearlman's repertoire. I don't know. Anyway, so not to discredit the talent that 98 Degrees and O-Town and all those groups had, but, at that point you are kind of like cloning something, sticking a stamp on it and putting it out into the world, and it's not sustainable.
No.
So,
and I think that's where we get off. It's the same way like you saw at Disney. I feel like there's a lot of, especially a little bit as we got a little bit older, Disney started at least showing a lot more of that on there.
Right.
And so there were a lot of groups that kind of just went with Disney and got pushed out that way, where you heard the names and you heard some of the songs, but like you didn't know them, and it wasn't in such a big way.
do you remember
Years ago.
M2M?
Yeah.
M2M on Disney Channel. They were more like a girl duo.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They had
yeah.
like mirror, mirror hanging on the wall. Yeah. You don't have to tell me who's the biggest fool of all. They had that like kind of jewel tone where they like,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Nailed it.
100%.
Nailed it.
Oh man.
Well, didn't blow it.
The only other one I'll bring up just to make sure that I'm not just picking on boy bands as overrated is, do y'all remember All Saints?
Yeah.
And their song, they were kind of like one-hit wonders and never, ever actually made it to a Now album. But I went back and listened to that the other day, and it's not good. It's not good. I mean, just...
I don't know.
They were not that talented, and the music video is truly atrocious.
Yeah.
But it's like, never, ever have I ever felt so low. And then at some point, she raps in the middle of it.
Oh.
But it's like a sad rap.
I feel like there's that part of me that ran same way. This week I was listening to everything I could on YouTube of like top whatever boy bands or girl groups, whatever, and songs from them. And like that song came on and it hit me in like a weird way. Like
halfway through, she starts going, oh, what is she? She says, a few things I need to know.
Yeah.
How you could ever hurt me so. And it's like, you're not singing and you're not rapping. Like, what are you doing?
Not gonna lie, it made my top 5 girl group songs.
No.
It did. It did. I had to pull my list back up. Like, did I pick that one?
I can't wait. I can't wait.
But because it did,
no
and
shame.
the reason I chose it is because I don't know if it's something middle school dance wise or something.
Yes.
And honestly, that's where a lot of this for us hits, is because if you didn't particularly go home and choose to listen to these,
Right. You have
if
memories.
if you were at a school dance, you heard these
associated with
songs.
them. Absolutely.
And so you didn't hate them because you were enjoying the moment with friends, or
Yeah.
like if you had a girlfriend, or if you were brave enough to ask a girl to dance that day, whatever. And so
Terror.
there's certain memories of these things.
Yeah.
And the same way, I feel like that got played at least a couple of that, or like, boy girl parties for a birthday that you went and had a DJ, something like that. Like, I couldn't tell you hardly any of the song, but something in certain parts about it hits you, and it's that nostalgic point of it.
Right.
So like hearing the Never Ever part, and even the girl voice in it, it's just like, I say girl, what's the line that you're talking about? It's like spoken word type thing.
Yes.
Like, there's something there that put me back at like a middle school dance. So I was like, okay, I'll put it on, because it's not obvious. So I was trying to choose a few that weren't super
Right.
popular.
Right,
but
right.
I can't say I listened to the whole thing and said, yeah, it qualifies. It's
Right.
just like, no, these moments
That's
hit, so.
that's actually what I did, because our next sections are like rapid fire song
Rapid
choice.
fire, yep.
And I thought, okay, well, everyone knows the radio hits, right? And so I tried to go deeper in either really popular groups, songs that were like number 7 on the album, right? That like weren't as well known, or just groups that didn't get as, or like they were one-hit wonders, and I heard the song and I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I remember that. Like, we used to listen to that on repeat, So that's what I tried to do for my song choices.
All right. Well, it's time.
It's time. Okay. How you want to do this?
So I'm going to go to Kyle.
Okay.
I'm going to just say rapid fire. If you want to do some explanation quickly,
Okay.
then you can do that. Then we'll go to you, Ashby, and
Okay.
then we'll go to me.
Okay.
And then we'll do boy bands first.
Cool.
So rapid fire, top 5 boy band songs.
Okay. First one, Mbop Hansen, because as much as I was supposed to hate it, I loved it, and they're still part of
Super
it now.
catchy.
You get super happy. One question: Casey and JoJo, boy band?
Yes.
Yes.
Do they count? Okay, All My Life.
Yeah.
Because every middle school dance
Absolutely.
hits you in the heart. Savage Garden, same way, as a duo, not a single person, so I would consider them a boy band. I Knew I Loved You. That was my first girlfriend I ever have. That was the song I got in a note that said, hey, this is our song.
Yeah.
I also like the color blue. My favorite number is
Right.
10. Along those lines of telling us each other about each other after we've already decided to
Hey,
start
I'm
dating.
12, but I'm capable of understanding what I Knew I Loved You Before I Met You means.
Totally not. But I also went and bought the CD, because this is your first song. You need to know
yeah.
this.
By the way, the
Truly,
CD,
Madly, Deeply.
Yeah.
the CD's good.
Oh, it
Yeah.
is.
I mean, I still listen to that album. The last song on that album is a tearjerker.
What's the one where they talk fast?
Is that the something with the animals or no?
Every time I close my eyes, I just take into a place where
Yes. I'm gonna have to listen to the album again. No.
So good.
It is. 100%.
So good.
So I throw that out there. End of the road, Boys to Men. Boys to Men's got to be thrown in there.
So good.
Same way.
So good.
I'm going to say I Want It That Way, just because I think that's just an historic song. I have like a list of others.
You're
in case,
killing me here.
Well, I have
But
like
this is-
4 or
this is
5
the-
songs in
this
case
is-
somebody chose one of these.
Yeah,
so,
see, I have like
but you
8
get to go
songs.
first.
yeah, so since
Yeah.
I'm
This
first,
is the risk I take by going first or going last.
so I'll throw it out there just so it's not, because most of mine, except for like Mbop, are kind of like sad. So I'll throw that one out there.
Cool.
That's
All right,
my
was that 5?
Yeah, that's
So
your
what were your
5.
5 again? One more time.
Mbop, All My Life, I Knew I Loved You, End of the Road, I Want It That Way.
All right.
Nice.
Ashby, rapid fire, best boy band
Okay.
songs.
LFO, Girl on TV.
Okay.
Do you guys remember that song? It did
Can't
not
say I
get
do.
radio play. It was literally the next song on the album from Summer Girl or whatever. And 98 Degrees, The Hardest Thing. I still remember the music video. It was about a boxer who was cheating on his wife with a ring girl.
I remember this.
And they were singing to the camera in the middle of a boxing ring. I can't remember if Nick Lachey actually played the boxer. Anyway,
Alex Winters didn't think of that song in the
Apparently
middle
not.
of boxing.
Apparently not.
Backstreet Boys, If You Want It to Be Good Girl, that was one of their inappropriate songs. But it was one of my favorites just because it was different from a lot of their other songs. It had like more of like sort of that, I don't know, it was like a different feel to it. And it was like, if you want it to be good, girl, get yourself a bad boy. And it was just, I don't know, I love that song. And it was on their first album. And I just would listen to it on repeat. And then also Hanson, Where's the Love, off of their first album. I also picked songs that came out in the actual 90s.
Yes.
So if a boy band or a girl group had a song after 2000, I did not pick that song, even though some of their best work was later. Anyway, Hanson, Where's the Love? So good. Off
That
their
is.
first album. Everyone listens to Mbop. There are some other really good songs on that album. And then also, 1, 2, 3, 4. I would say Nsync. I Want You Back. Also, not another huge hit for that.
You
Back. Yeah, so that it's a theme because I feel like If You Want It to Be Good Girl had the same kind of like, like there was like a vibe there I was really feeling with those two songs, and those definitely were not like hits for either one of those groups.
Yeah.
So, but do yourself a favor, go listen to Girl on TV by LFO. It's so good. You might have heard it. It might have made it to something. It was like
Well, if it was next, then I heard it sitting with Chris Schroeder on a football bus once. But
yes.
But yeah.
It was like wish for you on a falling star, wondering where you are.
I do, yep.
Do I ever cross your mind in the warm sunshine? Because it literally is like a guy who falls in love with a female celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like she's in the city of angels, and I'm just in love with the girl on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it my turn?
It is, sir.
So rapid fire, I'm having to release or rewrite some of the songs here because Kyle picked some of mine. But here's the thing: my songs are going to be the obvious songs because
Well, I
Love
thought
it.
between the three, it needed one of us would. So I tried to
Right.
throw some.
So for boy bands, we're going to go with the song we opened with. It's going to be the Backstreet Boys. Everybody,
Yes.
just
It's got to be.
everyone sings along with you here. You just
amazing.
jump in immediately.
Super stylized music video.
And of course, as it's marketed to teen girls, and you have that line there in the
Right.
pre-chorus,
Right.
In my sexual,
Right. 9-year-old me. Yeah. What?
Am
I had no
I
idea.
everything you need? You better rock your body right. Yeah.
Oh, God.
All right.
Yep. Yep.
With Nsync, we're gonna go with "It's Tearing Up My Heart When I'm With You, and when we are apart, I feel it too. And no matter what I do, I feel the pain."
go without you.
That was came out in 97. Otherwise, I would have gone with Bye Bye Bye. Clearly.
Right.
I know I bashed them, but I made the comment. All-time great hit. 98 Degrees, I do.
That was on my list, too.
Look, it is really good.
It's really
Again,
good.
another middle school
Yeah.
dance
Yep.
song.
Was the first dance song choice for hundreds of weddings probably during
I'm
that era.
sure.
Yeah.
Hundreds of weddings.
It's that,
Yeah.
like, that generation's...
Thousands.
Yeah.
It's that generation's 1,000 years.
Yes,
Like,
100%.
yeah.
And then we're going to jump back to the early 90s with Boys to Men.
Nice.
I'll Make Love to You.
Oh, man. I saw Boys
Again,
to
that's
Men
yelling that out.
open for New Kids on the Block. I'm pretty sure I've told the story on the podcast before. In the Greensboro Coliseum. And they sang I'll Make Love to You. And fake, but red rose petals rained from the ceiling of the Greensboro Coliseum onto the crowd as they sang that song. And I was like, my God, the theatrics. I love it.
Ashby leans over. Actually, here's
Yeah.
this rose that I kept
Yeah.
for 20 odd years now. I keep it as a bookmark in my favorite page.
Yeah.
So here's some trash they threw away.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell us the story if you ended up in somebody's tour bus again, but
No, that was New Kids on the
no,
Block.
that's right.
Well, speaking
It
of
was
new
Donnie
Kid-
Wahlberg.
Speaking of New Kids on the Block, my fifth song, Step by Step, came out in 1990.
Step by step, ooh, baby, gonna get to you, girl.
And of course, you know the steps. Step 1, we can have lots of fun.
Uh-huh.
Step 2, there's so much we can do.
Yeah.
Step 3,
It's just you and me.
Step 4,
I can give you more.
Step 5.
Don't you know that the time is right? Ooh.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Did I mention I've seen them 8 times in concert?
I'm not gonna lie, like I don't
Impressive.
think I'm up to date on New Kids on the Block. Like I
Oh,
think
man.
my sister loved them. Don't
They're
get me
more
wrong.
like 80s.
yeah, my sister loved them being 5 years older, but like, and I remember them being popular on like all of the family sitcom shows we loved as a child.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
yeah.
don't know enough.
All right, so we're going to be moving on. Did we mention Wilson Phillips, by the way,
didn't.
as a girl group, a girl trio?
Is that like, yeah,
No,
I guess they
they're,
would.
They're 80s, but they had some
Yeah.
90s influence in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
I think of is it Bridesmaids? Is that song?
Yes.
Yeah, every time I
Yes.
think about
Well, rapid fire, girl groups,
that. Okay.
top 5 songs.
Am I going first or are we going reverse this time?
You go first.
Okay.
I will make do with what I have.
I'm going to change this one up. Spice Up Your Life by Spice Girls.
Nice.
It's just a very fun, fast, good one.
You guys
So
would love Spice World. I can't wait to show it to you.
I'm excited to see it. I mentioned it as some of my favorite lists, but Waterfalls from TLC. I think it's just an instant classic.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to that when I went through Starbucks on the way here, and I was like, maybe when I get up to the window, it'll still be blaring, but I think it went to commercial or change or something since then. Again, Never Ever by All Saints. I already kind of threw that out
love
there.
it. I love that for you.
Yeah. There's another TLC one that I almost picked, but I changed it. Unpretty. I remember as a dude watching this video, like, and it opening your eyes for the first time because it very much showed a whole lot of what was expected out of girls and what the world were showing them that they needed to look like, what
Yep.
they're supposed to do. And you have, Chili, one of the members of TLC, going like about to have like breast augmentation
Yep.
and then looking at all these other things that could happen, and just showing like that's not who you are. You don't have to have these things. I think it was just a deep song, especially as a teenage
It
boy
was.
watching this.
It was.
I know for like I'm sure teenage girls and everybody else too is very important, but like as a dude,
Right.
somehow TLC kind of got a pass where you could watch, care about them or whatever, versus some of the boy bands and stuff. But
Yeah.
like I just remember that one. I remember Waterfalls being big because, like I've mentioned
Right.
before, my sister. But then to see this video, it had a whole new meaning. Like to really
Well, and I
appreciate
got
things.
really excited when Glee covered Unpretty because it brought that song to a whole new generation
Sure.
of girls. And I think that message is really important. And that is a great song.
It is. It's really good. So, and I honestly hadn't listened to it in a long time. So that was another one that brought it up. Last one, I'm going to go with Bills by Destiny's Child.
Nice.
I just remember the same way. Again, it's funny because there's like the girl groups that it was okay for guys to like. And I don't know if it's just because it was women or if it was whatever. But like it wasn't.
Because it was hip hop.
Well, that's the thing.
think
A lot
that's
of
it.
the,
It
a lot of the
wasn't-
girl groups were mostly based in hip hop and
Right.
R&B.
It was, and I think
Right.
that it wasn't like your typical like pop Britney Spears one person thing. It was
Right.
like this group, and it's okay if
Right.
you like that instead.
Right.
I don't know. It was just fun. Like I always remember that one first.
Right. Interesting.
Ashby.
Okay. So I'm going to throw some, like B-side stuff at you. Okay. Spice Girls, Mama.
It's good.
Such a good song. Also, Who Do You Think You Are? Off their first album. Excellent. Didn't really make radio play. Dream, I've already mentioned When I Get There. They had 2 songs off that first album that made it to radio, but When I Get There is like track 5 or 6, and it's fantastic. It's really good. 702, Where My Girls At? Where My Girls At? From the front to back, see as you feeling that? Trying to take my man, see I don't need that. Oh my, it's so good. Just like, oh, what a banger. Then also In Vogue, Free Your Mind, and the rest will follow. Oh, that was like early, a little bit earlier, but I think In Vogue also maybe gets lumped in more to the TLC era, Salt and Pepper, that kind of stuff, more than like the moving into the 2000s girl groups. But they were really good. And then gotta give it to my girls, Bewitched. They were kind of like one-hit wonders, but Say La Vie.
I listened on the way here today.
Say what I want, Say La Vie. They were Irish, and they had like some jig, like some fiddle in their stuff. Like they brought in an Irish flavor to their like girl group sound. And they also, I think, benefited from the Disney Channel.
They
but
did.
That song still gets me moving. It's good.
I was listening to that like on the road up to your house today, and like something about knowing they're Irish, but you listen. It always amazes me when you listen to people sing how their voice can change, where it's not so thick that you hear the accent anymore. It's not
Right.
until you hear them speak that you know any different.
Right.
In the same way, I was like listening to that song in a whole, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's crazy how like your voice does that.
Yeah.
Same way like you can't understand Ozzy Osbourne talk.
Right.
For
And they
anything.
do talk on that
Yeah.
song, so you
And
get to
that's
hear
when
them
you know.
talk and sing, and
Yeah.
you're like, wait a second. They're Irish?
Who's this random person that
Yeah.
got guest vocal on their song?
Some people say I look like me dad. Like, what? Oh, man.
All right.
Good one.
So on me now, rapid fire.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna go Destiny's Child first. Say my name.
Yes.
Iconic.
Oh, so good.
Yep. We're gonna jump over to TLC, and we don't want no scrubs.
Yeah.
Because the scrub is a guy who can't
Thinks
get no
he's
love
fly.
from me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he just sits on his broke tail. So
Yeah.
no.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go back to Wilson Phillips. This song came out in 1990.
So good.
Hold on.
Hold on for one more day.
We're gonna go to the Spice Girls. We're gonna go Wannabe.
That was the other
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Obviously, I mean, it's a top 5 all time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Just like
90s
instantly
song,
iconic.
so-
You hear that like knock, 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 knock. Ah.
And
Yeah.
then I'm gonna go
And
to
you're like, it's happening.
This is it.
and then I'm gonna go to a group that we haven't mentioned tonight or this afternoon or this morning or
Ooh,
whatever.
okay.
The Dixie Chicks.
Oh, yeah, they would count, right?
They would count. They're a girl
Oh,
group. It was a
man.
country genre, but I still think it counts.
There's Your Trouble was my jam.
And I
one
was
you
going to
gonna
go with
go
Traveling Soldier, but it came out in 2002.
Okay,
So we're
that's
going to
fair.
go with Wide Open Spaces,
Yes.
1997.
Yes.
I know it was on our mixtape
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, but I think it fits here, and I think
Right.
it's a great song. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I had one other that I was going to try to cram in, but it came out officially in like 2002. But they're from like Russia. I don't know if it's Russia. They're from another country. I don't remember. But they tried to put in. They came out at like 99.
Okay.
But it got. I guess it was in that language or whatever. But Tattoo that came out, like all the things you said. If you listen to
All
that,
the
like
things you said, all the things you said.
running through my head,
through my
head. I was like,
Yes.
So that was actually WWE wrestler Victoria's
Okay.
entrance
Yeah.
song when she debuted in 2002.
Yeah.
that song, like in the midst of all of the research we're doing
Right.
this week, that song popped in my head and I could not get it out. And so I
That's
was
funny.
like, man, this is going to be a great one for the list. And then I was like,
Yeah.
2002, but 99, can I say that? It's like, no, like
Oh,
it didn't
when
come
we were
here
talking
until
about,
then. So
90s music the other day we were recording that episode. I had the Cardigans Loveful stuck in my
Yes.
head for like 3 weeks. It would
Yes.
not leave.
it's so good.
I would just be brushing my teeth, thinking about work, and then be like, love me, say that you... And I was like, why can't I get this to go away?
It's so good though.
There was one song that barely missed it because it came out in 2000, but it was Dream, He Loves You Not.
Yeah.
So I did have an asterisk next to When I Get There because it's the same album, and that was the one that I just couldn't stay in the 90s because that came out in 2000. It's so good.
I feel like it all blends right into that.
Yeah.
Like,
Real quick, bands that aren't boy bands or girl groups that might actually be boy bands or girl groups that nobody mentions, I'm going to throw out, I mentioned it a couple of times, Limp Bizkit, Korn.
Run DMC,
I mean,
Wu-Tang.
the idea of a boy band being marketed towards a certain subset of fans is
Right.
what I'm kind of looking at in my opinion. And when I think of Korn or Limp Bizkit, they were clearly marketed to teenage boys, not teenage girls.
Right.
But you take that out, and I think
Right.
it's the same thing.
Yeah, I had some questions in this section just because, like Casey and JoJo, Savage Garden, duos is a duo
lump it
of
in,
band,
yeah.
but we lump it in. And then BB Mac, for the reasons I talked about earlier, it's like they did play their own instruments. They didn't need choreography. They
Dixie
were
Chicks,
more
same way.
right, same way. So like, it becomes kind of like nebulous based on the era and what was being marketed and how it was being marketed. And one of the things that I thought about was mixed sex bands, like that were boys and girls that ended up getting lumped into this era, like S Club 7,
Yeah.
18s. Do you remember the 18s? They were heavily marketed
Yeah.
on the Disney Channel. And because, I was young enough to think I wasn't really listening. Like, you have to get into high school before you start really listening to what your parents are listening to. And you don't just immediately, like, my dad used to put on Elton John's Yellow Brick Road album in his car, and we would listen to it. And I just remember being like, ugh, so stupid. Like, you listen to stupid music. I want to listen to Backstreet Boys. And then one day, I just remember actually listening to Benny and the Jets, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I had no concept for who ABBA was. So in my mind, whatever the 18s were doing was new music. And it took me forever to figure out that the 18s, the ABBA teens, were a recreation of ABBA. It was two boys and two girls.
I had no idea.
They sang Dancing Queen. They basically were just ABBA repackaged and wrapped up with a bow and shoved into our faces.
It's like Hillsong Young and Free is basically Hillsong for teenagers.
Sure.
Correct.
I had no idea.
Yes.
It's tough. And again, I think the Limp Bizkit Korn thing is easy to just yell at me like, no, it's not. It's rock band. It's what it is. I get what you're saying, though, where it's the same thing of if you want to look at how it's marketed, then yeah, I can see that side where it's like, this wasn't just music that was put out for the world. This was put out, and I don't mean that it's tough because it's not just teens that listen to Limp Bizkit. There's tons of everybody did. It was the rock thing at the time, but it makes me think back to early 90s. We were talking about like Third Eye Blind or Oasis or anybody. It was put out as music for everybody to enjoy, and I do think during that time period of the world selling us boys that no, you can't like Backstreet Boys.
Right.
You like Limp Bizkit
Here's
instead.
an alternative.
And so we did, and because it was heavy, it even more so made us like, I don't listen to that stupid music. I listen to this. So like, I don't necessarily agree it's a boy band, but I totally can see exactly what you're saying. Like,
Right.
And so that's the tough part. For me, it gets a little more tough looking back further. As I said earlier, like the Beatles.
Right.
That's the first thing that is very similar to what this is. Beach Boys is very similar, where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's
Right.
music for everybody. Like, so it's not so much, but it still is a group together. It's so tough.
Would the Black Eyed Peas,
That's another. Like,
would they be like, if they
an
were in
ensemble
the,
group.
in
Right.
the 90s, would they be in that
I don't know.
mix?
And I feel like it's really hard to just say the dividing line is instruments versus
it
no
is. It
instruments.
gets tougher. Yeah.
Because then it's like Hanson's on a boy band.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it's like the Go-Go's, not a girl group, play their own instruments. So, but like that ends up being a weird line to walk.
Well,
And
and
it
I
is.
think there's different definitions for boy band versus girl group.
Right.
I really think the main difference for boy bands is, you mentioned instruments versus choreography or dancing. Well, Hanson doesn't.
Right.
They play instruments. They're
Right.
not a boy band.
Exactly.
But who are they marketed to? I think it's
Correct.
all
That's
in
true.
the marketing.
Correct.
If they're marketed to young
Right.
preteen girls, then it falls under boy band.
Right.
If not, then it falls into another genre.
Right.
And I think it's easy to get real confused with that real fast.
Right.
Because I think, obviously, when we first mentioned this months ago, we we're like, boy band,
Right.
girl band, no problem. Nsync, Backstreet Boys, all the things.
Right.
This. But then when you get into it, it's
Right.
very much like, even, All For One,
Right.
Boys to Men, it's very easy to quickly be like, well,
Right.
it's kind of this other thing, but technically it falls within this.
Right.
So, like, it gets tough. And I do think you could make a stretch and make an excuse for a lot of other people to be put into these categories. But I don't know. I think you can dig deep and find all sorts of things. Or if you just want to stay at surface level, then you kind of get the idea of mostly Backstreet Boys and TLC and stuff like that too. So I don't know.
All right. I believe we have 2 more questions. The first being most influential group to the genre.
Spice Girls.
Yeah, I agree.
Hands down. Girl power.
I agree for the girl group Spice Girls. I would say Nsync on the other coin, just for what Justin Timberlake was able to do beyond the group.
I refuse to publicly state if I'm Backstreet or Nsync.
Oh, that's the next question.
Well, I haven't got there yet.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I think mine will throw out there is just New Kids on the Block because I think it's an older one
Definitely.
Yeah.
that came first where I
Right.
put that as this was my sister's Backstreet Boys.
Right.
My sister liked Backstreet Boys and Nsync too.
Right.
But as this was an earlier age,
Right.
and then it came along when all the Backstreet Boys and Nsync and everybody else came along too,
Right.
you automatically were like, well, this was the first, and then here we are
Right.
today. Like, so
Yeah, I don't think that anyone in Backstreet or Nsync would argue that without New Kids, they don't
Yes,
exist.
I would agree
right?
with that, yes.
And New Kids was heavily marketed to R&B stations and
Yep.
hip hop stations when they first came along, and it was weird. It was difficult for them to get traction because it was like, oh, well, they're like Boys to Men or New Edition or whatever, and it's like, well, these guys are white,
Yeah.
so And it wasn't until they started shopping them around to pop, like top 40 stations, that they got some traction. And so I do think that in a lot of ways, I mean, New Edition paved the way for New Kids on the Block. New Kids on the Block 100% paved the way for Backstreet and Nsync.
Yeah.
So I would say that as a transitional moment, New Kids was highly influential to the genre, for sure.
Best group.
I'm not going to say it.
Got to pick?
Nope. 98 Degrees.
Well, shoot.
I picked one that was different. I picked Boys to Men because I want to say too this does go against a little bit what we were talking about a few minutes ago. But Boys to Men was marketed for anybody could like them. There wasn't a stigmatism or whatever to not like them.
Yeah.
And again, that can go into marketing and everything else. But as a young dude growing up, I could sit there and listen to Boys to Men the same way I could sing them, and nobody would look at you weird.
Right.
I remember, and this is a little bit older, but right out of high school or in college, we were walking in the Greenville Mall, me and Brandon Evans, and we came up to like the food court, and there was a group of dudes off to the side, just straight up a cappella doing like their thing, singing Boys to Men. And Brandon Evans, like being the person he is, just walks up, starts singing with them, and they kind of look at him.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh my God, like what's about to happen here? They're like, they're sounding good, and here he's just some random white dude walking up on them, like,
Right.
and they all stopped, looked at him, and they just are harmonizing all around. I mean, it was an amazing moment I never forget. Just standing there, and like, I can't imagine him walking up there doing that to like Nsync or Backstreet
Right,
Boys.
right.
But Boys to Men to me stood out as everybody loves this. It's amazing. Everybody can agree on this.
Right.
It's not marketed to say you can or can't. So again, depending on how you judge boy bands or girl like groups, I get that. But for me, that's the one that stands out because I wasn't told not to like them. Like I was
Right.
allowed fully to really just enjoy what they did. So
Right.
for me, that's where I put them.
All right. I'm going to go just Nsync.
Okay.
Again, just based off of Justin Timberlake's contributions post-group.
Strong.
But I do feel like they did not outstay their welcome.
That's true.
I felt like they had their three big
Yep.
albums.
Yep.
And then they were done.
Yeah.
You know,
NSYNC, No Strings Attached, and Celebrity.
Celebrity, yep. So
Yeah.
that's where I landed.
Although I will only say that Backstreet still touring, still together.
They're still touring, yes. But
Just saying. Just throwing that out there.
I do feel like there were some valley lows for
Oh,
Backstreet
for sure.
Boys.
For sure. The Black and Blue album.
Whereas I felt
not-
like
not
NSYNC
great.
went out on top, and
True.
if they ever
True,
do
true.
reunite for anything beyond just a cameo, I think it'll
They'll sell out.
sell out.
Oh, 100%.
amazingly.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And I do think, to be fair, Backstreet Boys definitely deserves to be in that top ranking
Right.
as well. Just because, I don't have I'm not on either side of it per se.
Right.
Like, I could enjoy either songs. But I think Backstreet came first, right?
Yes.
Yes.
By like a year or two.
Technically, yes.
Because I think they're even technically before Hanson. I think at least Like
I think Hanson was 95.
Oh, was it 95? For some reason, they stood out 97.
Yeah, but Hanson was really young.
They
I mean,
were.
I'm not kidding when I say Zach Hanson was only 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Like when you watch the Mbop music video, he's a baby. He's
Yeah.
a baby behind a drum set. And then Taylor and Isaac were only 9 and 12 or something. I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah.
It was nuts. So I think that Hanson beat out Backstreet Boys just because they hit the market at so young.
Younger age. Okay.
And then Backstreet hit around 97.
Okay. Maybe I have my dates backwards
Yeah.
then. But either way, the fact that they came out, they were officially the one. And then Nsync came along too. Not
Right.
taking anything away
Right.
from them, but as we discussed earlier, all the other groups that got made later because
Correct.
of them.
Correct.
I definitely think they've got to be up in the fight at least for like
Right.
top, because to give them respect,
Right.
you know, I don't want somebody upset at home thinking you can't took away Backstreet Boys, you saying Boys of Men, and you got Nsync, blah blah, like throwing their phones or like wrecking their cars or setting them on fire, like in I don't think that's happening, but at the same time, I definitely want to mention and just say they definitely deserve to be up there in that top fight.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get out of here on this. A big thank you to Ricky Lyles. Do we have any social media shout-outs that we need to get
Not
into?
songs, no,
Okay.
not on this one.
Cool. Hope you enjoyed our discussion as much as we did, and that you're as pumped for the rest of our journey into 90s pop culture as we are. What are our last-minute plugs, Ashby?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashby Gray. I just bought tickets to go see New Kids on the Block with Salt and Pepper and someone else, and Rick Astley, I think. And I just bought tickets to go see Hanson, and those are in the same week.
That's
so, follow along to hear me.
That's an amazing
fangirl
week.
over that. Yeah.
I'm a little upset with Rick Astley. He said I could borrow any of his Pixar movies except for one. He says, I'm never going to give you up.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Funny enough, I saw on my phone, Apple let me know today that Smash Mouth has a new singer now.
Okay.
And they announced it by putting out a cover of Never Gonna Give You Up today. I didn't listen to it, but
Wow.
that was on like top news as I was brushing
there's a
my
90s boy band.
Covers I never wanted to see for $600, Alex.
Yeah, I was brushing my teeth and that popped up this morning. I was like, okay, sure.
Do I want to listen to this?
I don't know. I was like, it's not All Star. I don't know. But I'm Kyle _live_bright_ on Instagram. I don't really have anything musically I'm thinking of hardcore. Oh, I will say, Dashboard Confessional put out a new album last week or 2 weeks ago now at this point. I'm not sure. All the things I can tell. I'm sorry. I'm zoning out. It was a very last minute thought. Totally recommend the album, especially it's very similar to what we listened to when they first came out. It's really good. There's an amazing song on there that I love as a dad now, or just as a person that has something special in my life, called Me and Mine. Chris Carrabba, his entire life or his musical career, has never been one to put much information out there about his family. He's very protective over them,
Right.
so they don't get involved in things. But he does a song that talks about his son, his daughter, and his wife in a very just like loving and touching way that I definitely recommend you going and checking out.
That album has Here's to Moving On, too,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good stuff on there. So it's definitely a great one to listen to. And also, because of the new album, there's a lot of podcasts that he's been on recently. Pure Pleasure Podcast is one. Tuna on Toast is another one. But I definitely recommend both of them going and listening, because there's a lot of really cool stories. Chris Carrabba comes out of like a more hardcore screamo scene back in the day before he started Dashboard on the side. So there was a lot of really good conversation about including some of those moments and what it's being like being a dude that's real small in stature and playing these really emotional songs with like guys from really big hardcore bands and their kids singing along to every word on the side of the stage, like watching him, loving him. And he does briefly mention a little bit about his family in both, where one, he got asked about his family and he said, I'm sorry, but I don't really talk about my family. And then in this one, he mentions that song specifically and like vaguely talks about it a little bit. So definitely recommend both of those podcasts and that new album. So check that out.
And I'm Eric Creech. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at EricOBack15. And be sure to join us next week as we discuss the Mighty Ducks.
Quack, quack.
Actually, sorry, no. Yeah, Mighty Ducks we're doing Nickelodeon game shows next
Yeah.
week.
Oh, yeah.
My
yeah.
bad.
I'm excited for
Whoopsie.
this.
My bad.
Spoiler alert, Mighty Ducks coming up
Yep.
Sometime.
Nickelodeon game shows, and then Mighty Ducks will be the week after that. So
It's coming.
A little
Get
typo
ready.
in my out. At some point, we'll release a schedule, so just go check the schedule. Who knows
Yeah.
what's coming out next?
Yeah.
It'll either be Nickelodeon game shows or the Mighty Ducks at some point, in either order. So,
Nice.
but yeah, stay as cool as the other side of the pillow, and we'll see you next week, guys.
Hey, hey. Bye, bye, bye.
Bye.